Okay, so what I want you to do is to open up one of your scene files in Max. You should now have them all saved out with your cameras ready to go after last week's tutorials. If you haven't managed to get to this, I strongly suggest that you get all of your scene files organized with the building model in the context. So I'll open up scene 1, and that will give me my first camera, which is called Street Corner, and it's a 300 frame render. And you can see it's just doing a pan across the entry of the building and then finishing or finalizing on the west facade, which is the balcony of Grant Andrews Place. Okay, what we have to do now is we have to set up the render farm, and in order to do this we've got to open up the render setup, and you'll see we have first of all the time output. So normally when we're doing a single frame render we have single. This time we have to activate the active time segment, which is the 1 to 300 frames. Of course you can also do a range if you like, if you only want to sort of test something that you've done. The area that we're going to render is obviously view. Our output now is to HDTV, and the final renders will be done at 1920 by 1080, and that will also set up in Premiere so that there's a direct correlation between the two file types. But because all we're doing is testing the cameras, and we will probably want the render time to be relatively quick, we'll just use the 1280 by 720 frame count. Okay, this is the important aspect, and if you don't get this right, it will pretty much just crash your file when you're trying to send it to the render farm. The really important aspect of using the render farm is saving all the files onto the W drive. So you must have the W drive selected for it to work. You must have all of your material files saved there and the files that you're going to use. So you can see here I'm going to save pass 1. I'm going to call the file of it scene 1, and I'm going to save it as a PNG image file. The good thing about PNG is it allows us to set a transparency for the background, which we can then later composite 3D another movie file of clouds animated, if you will. Okay, so we'll save that in the W drive, and once again under your files. So you can see I've saved mine under Renee Grant and Ange's house. And once again, you can open these files and you can use them. You can have a look what I've done, because all the settings will be saved. So if you do get stuck, just open these files, and in post-production you'll see in render passes I've got all my scenes laid out where I'm going to put the single frames, pass 1, and then where I'm going to save the AVI or the MPEG out, which we can use for the final editing. So here's pass 1, save. That's the first part of setting up the net render. The second part is to click the net render button. Now when we go to render, you will see that it automatically gives us the network job assignment. So this is where we have to connect it to the IP address, which is a bit like the post box, if you will, of the server that manages all of the render farm. As I was saying in the lecture today, there is 25 nodes in the render farm, and they're available for 24 hours of a day. So therefore that's worked out that over a particular week each student has around about 80 hours of rendering time, which is really good. If you want to work out how to set up your network rendering and you've forgotten after the tute, you'll see that the settings are on this website. So if you go to server settings, the render farm IP address is 130.95.192.60, and you cut and paste that into the enter manager name, and make sure you switch off automatic search and hit connect. Okay, as soon as you hit connect, you can see that all of the nodes on the render farm show up in the top as servers. So each one of these nodes is a computer and a CPU. We can add and subtract to that, so as the semester goes on, and once again this is why it's so important for you guys to keep the Excel spreadsheets up to date. We need to manage how many nodes we can, so we can actually have up to 50 nodes. probably even more, which will give us a lot more rendering time, which we will need near the end of the semester. Okay, now that we've done that, you can see that by default normally split scan lines is selected. Do not select that. That's really only for single frame rendering. What you want is each of the nodes to render out each frame, and you want to use all servers that are available. Now once again, this has a job sequence, and it will do jobs based on the sequence. There is the capacity to change priority. If anybody does change priority to 100% in order to jump the queue, I will instruct Jamie to stop that and just delete it off without any explanation. So if everybody could just be fair with each other and keep the priority at 50%, then there won't be jumping of queues and things will be done in order of submission. So scene 1 here, this little plus button, if you've already sent off a scene 1, which I have, if you try to submit it, it won't be able to because the job name already exists. If you hit the plus button, it will give you a new file name, which also happens to have already been done. So I've now changed it to scene 1 pass 2, and we'll submit. Okay, so that's now sent off the file off to the render farm, and you can then go and start to edit and open your next scene. So we'll go to scene 2, which I've saved, and that is camera, a separate camera, which I've already done, and once again you can then send off that file to the queue. If we go back to the monitor, okay, so this is where you can see what's going on and you can take feedback from the monitor of the render farm. In order to get the monitor up, you go to All Programs, Application Coursework, Autodesk, Backburner, and you see there's the monitor. You just click on that and it will bring up your monitor. Now once again, we have to connect it to a server, and you have to put in the IP address that I showed you before so that it can pick up on it, which is 130.95.192.60. Once again, once you've done this once, it should save it into your profile, so you won't have to do it every time. And hit OK. You can see that all the jobs come up, and you can see all the servers. Now, if I select the scene 1, which I've already sent off, you get the job summary, which tells you all the information about the file, how many tasks. You can see it now shows you how long each of the renders are taking. You'll find that the first time a node renders one of your files, it will be a lot longer than the second round because it had to open the file as well. So you'll see that the completed frames further down are a lot quicker. And then here are the job details, which starts to give you some feedback on how long things are taking. And if there's any errors, for example, if you haven't done the maps properly or you haven't saved it into the render drive on the W drive, it will tell you there's problems here, so you can use that as feedback. If you have errors that come up here and you need to work out, it's just cut and paste it and send it to me, and I can tell you what the problem is. Okay, so now you've set up your file with the render farm. The next part is to be able to open these files in Premiere and turn it into a video file, which is part 2 of this tutorial.